612 ABC Brisbane.
10 to 9, back to the rail network. As you've seen from this morning, the trains are running basically on time for the interim timetable, although there are some minor delays on the Redcliffe line and the Ferny Grove line. And people are still asking the question. In fact, we've received some very interesting emails about how Queensland Rail could get it so wrong. That's the question that every commuter, state government and even QR employees are asking. On face value, the lack of forward planning of driver training and what seems also to be a below standard recruitment process is also to blame. But are there more complicated reasons? Owen Doogan is the State Secretary of the Train, Tram and Bus Union and is very aware of the internal training and recruitment workings of Queensland Rail. Owen Doogan, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
You heard my discussion yesterday on the program and I had a lot of questions about the recruitment and training processes. What's been happening with the training of drivers for Queensland Rail?
Well, the training has been going on, but the reality is it depends what resources are available for training, and that's really the problem that we have at this point. I'm not suggesting for 1 second that is the reason that we have got the shortages in itself. There's a number of factors involved in that, but to try and alleviate the issue, the focus has got to be on dealing with the process of actual training.
So you need qualified drivers to train drivers up to get to the qualified standard?
Well, we need more tutor drivers. We need more trainers. There is already, before this crisis occurred, there is a recruitment process on for more driver trainers, and there's a pool selected, which the final selection will be made for the driver trainers from that. So there's some progress being made there, but there needs to be more tutor drivers as well to speed up the actual recruitment.
The recruitment process, does that only occur internally or does it occur externally as well?
The recruitment process isn't really a problem just now. What we've got is a whole backlog of people who are waiting to go through training, and we're talking years rather than... So we're talking in the actual training program that's been put together. There's about 20 goes into each course. But there is a whole number of people who have been selected for training who are waiting to do training at the present time.
So they want the job?
There isn't any problem with the recruitment. The problem is that there's lots of people recruited. There's lots of people put their hands up for the job. The problem we've got just now is that we have a bottleneck in training. So the recruitment process in itself isn't the issue. There's a historical problem which I'll give you some information on. As you probably, or you may be aware, or some of your listeners may be aware, the train crew area has an older age profile than many others.
Of course.
And it therefore is a requirement to be a constant turning over of train crew. So you're always training, and always have been in the 26 years I've been in the industry over here. There's always been constant training, except for 2013. There was a 12-month freeze on driver training, and at the same time, they took 66 people out of the training area and driver area. They gave redundancy to 2 actual trainers, 9 tutor drivers, 25 drivers, 14 guards, and 16 administrative staff. Now, that all happened back in 2013. It was only on Friday that we found out the reason why that occurred. A senior manager in QR advised myself and senior members of the Department of Transport.
So what were you told on Friday?
Well, they said, I actually have to be fair, I did give them a serve about what they did in 2013. And in response to that, QR said, well, we had no choice. We had a directive from the shareholding ministers that we had to cut these areas in order to prepare for the franchising of the Queensland Rail Services, which was and the senior management from the Department of Transport then said, yeah, that was right. So I was quite stunned when I was done that. The meeting I had was to try and work out ways in which to overcome the problem.
Okay. Now, Owen, we heard last night or yesterday afternoon that a senior manager for train services has been dismissed over this. What's the union's reaction to that?
Well, first of all, my understanding is that he's been stood down. So
Stood down, my apologies.
Yeah. At this point, I don't know the fine detail about what happened in relation to the communication that occurred between management, etc. So I don't have a great deal about that. But I don't think that the person who was making the decisions on Thursday and Friday last week is the person who should be taking the responsibility for this. This is an issue. Well, this is something that's built up over years rather than over weeks. It won't surprise people that you would expect that everything would be in place for something like this.
Except that we've known that the new rail line has been coming for a long period of time, Owen Doogan.
Well, I'm in valid agreement with you. That's what I'm trying to say. Is the reality is that there are other people who are other decision makers who make the determination about how many staff are going to be in the workplace, how many they can put into the workplace.
So are you telling me that a decision under the period of the LNP government basically removed or made redundant a number of key trainers of train drivers?
That's correct, but I'm not suggesting for 1 second that's the only reason we have the difficulty now.
Right.
There is another difficulty that occurred in relation to the new Moreton Bay rail line out to Redcliffe, and it had to do with the signalling system. I think that's the catalyst. It's not the reason, but it's the catalyst for this to some extent. What happened there, some of your listeners may be aware from several months ago, that the signalling system that they decided to put into Moreton Bay rail line was not compatible with the Queensland rail system.
Yes.
For the first time in 100 years, the people who are better building railways than anyone else had been excluded from building the Moreton Bay link for ideological reasons. They weren't allowed to even put a tender in. Now, that's one of the reasons why we're in this difficulty. But the technical problem that emerged from that is that, unlike the Springwood track, where everyone was trained up and was able to work the track straight away, there was no access to training for the drivers from the junction to the first station on that line. So what you've got now is that a lot of tutor drivers are having to work as the pilots to get the drivers through those areas, and those tutor drivers therefore aren't able to drive. And there's a number of other projects where tutor drivers have been tied up.
Now, let me ask you a question that's slightly political in nature. So, but everyone knew about this on Thursday afternoon. The minister knew, the head of QR knew, and the person who's apparently been stood aside or stood down knew. What should have happened? I mean, people could have been warned, couldn't they?
Well, I'm not going to get into the communications. I'll leave you to ask the Queensland Rail about communications.
Right.
As far as what happened was we had meetings with Queensland Rail on the Thursday. We then had meetings with, we were asked to have meetings with the TransLink and the government and Queensland Rail to try and work out how we could limit the crisis. But the crisis has occurred by that. And I might say that one of the problems that emerged, a lot of people don't appreciate, is that we have a fatigue management system, because I think people much prefer the drivers being awake in the trains.
You want them to be well rested, yes.
There's never been an objection for the passengers for that. And what happens is, part of the fatigue management is that after 11 days straight without a day off, then it is mandatory under fatigue management that the driver takes a day off. Because of the build-up with the introduction of the Redcliffe line, there was 41 drivers who had reached their 11 days straight on Friday. And that no doubt had an impact, because many of them would have been normally rostered to work.
All right, so you don't believe the person that's been stood aside, the head of rail services, necessarily should take the fall for this?
No, I don't. Okay. I don't think. I'm not going to go into, because I don't know all the detail, but I think that it goes to different levels, and I'm looking forward to finding out what comes out of the investigation. One thing I'd like to say, and I would like to just push this in, I'd like to take the opportunity, and I don't get this opportunity often, to thank all the train crew for the efforts that they've been putting into. There's been an awful lot of stress on the train drivers. There's people coming back from holiday, and there has been, the public has been brilliant in the most part, but there have been a few people that have been a bit abusive to train crew, who are doing their bloody best to look after the needs of the service. So I'd ask people to be patient and understand it's not the station staff and it's not the train crew that is responsible for that. There's other people you should be given a hard time for.
Thanks for coming in, Owen Doogan.
Thank you very much.
Owen Doogan, State Secretary of the Train, Tram and Bus Union.